So this is the start of the build of the Suzuki gt550, and in this case I'm going to do the engine first. And I'm going to do the engine first because I'm an ex-engineer. I like doing engines. Simple as that. It's all been taken apart. I photograph everything. I'm not sure whether I've got a drawing of this. I'll have to have a look. Can't remember. And the other good thing is I can't remember what I've done with the photos. So let's crack on, and we have to make it up as we go along. I'm just going to clean all these gaskets off. I'll leave the gaskets, as much of the gaskets on as possible, because this was going for blasting, and they covered up some of the holes and things like that. And also, more importantly, they protect these faces here, which are machine faces. You really don't want them blasting there. I mean, one of the things I always say is have a word with them and tell them not to blast the bearing landing faces, which doesn't look like he has, which is exactly what you want. And the reason for that is that these are actually machined to wavelengths of light, that type of tolerance. If you degrade that, it allows the rolling element bearing to fret, and eventually it'll start to move, and then you're going to lose the whole crankcase. And the other thing it does as well is that when you remove that material, right, and you do get fretting, is it reduces the compression on the rolling element bearing coming from the interference fit. Right, and the effect of that is massively reduced rolling element bearing life. Okay, massively reduced. You need to have that compression. If you, that's why when you see people, oh, it's a worn housing, I'll just use bearing fit and all that. Yeah, absolutely. You use that if you've got to. I mean, I've done it not on an engine, but on when I used to be at sea on. In the middle of nowhere, you've got to do something, but you just have to be mindful of the fact that it's just not going to last. It's not going to last like it's supposed to last. So yeah, we'll crack on. So you see, this is just flash corrosion. This is it's nothing serious. All this white stuff is the soda blast. So the good thing about soda blast is it is water soluble. So to get rid of it, you can actually just wash it, and that will get rid of it, and I'll probably do that. You can blast it with air. I've got a compressor here, really big compressor, too big really for what I need, and you can do that. The other thing is there's some stuff here which is white and it looks similar to this. That's more likely to be an aluminium oxide. Okay, that's another problem when you blast. This guy's done a really good job, really high quality job. You see some of them, and they actually, your soda blast is exactly what you should do. Some of them, they actually grip blast, and what that does is it removes the skin. You can see that, to the nice smooth skin. And then two things happen. Then one is that, you know, the surface is now rust, and it'll pick up dirt so much easier. And the other thing as well is that you are removing material as well when you're doing that, and you've got to be careful. You do have to be careful, because some of these castings are incredibly thin, and even remove, I mean, to give you an idea on a ship, right, for a non-structural piece of material, the maximum diminution is 25%. For a structural element, right, you're looking at 15%. So if you get a beam or something, or a piece of scantling which is corroded by more than 15%, then you have to replace it. And if you look at some of these, feeling that one there, that's probably around about 4 mil. So 15% of that, what's that, 0.6 mil? So that's all they've got to take off is 0.6 mil, and then the structural integrity of the crankcase is gone. I can bore for hours on this crap, I really can. Just point this out. It looks to me like this has had copper slip on it. And copper slip's an anti-seize compound, so it's ideal really for bolts and things like this. You do have to be careful for two things though, if you are going to use copper slip or moly coat or anything like that. is one, it shouldn't really be used for bolts which are in tension, which are required to remain in tension, okay, without a secondary securing device, right? And the reason for that is because the copper slip can allow the bolt to untighten, right? So the clamping pressure, because what you do, you tighten it down, so obviously you're creating a clamping pressure for the casing, right? But also it creates a friction on the surface here, and that locks the bolt. So a quick FYI, that's why when you tighten big engine bolts, what you do is a 3-stage process typically. So first stage you go all the way around about 50-60% of the torque, then you go to 100% of the torque, and then you go round again for 100% of the torque, and the last time you go round is actually to lock the nut, right? That's what it's for. I've been on or joined a ship where the lad who did the, I think it was that's right, he changed the piston and he didn't do the third set of retentions at 100% because he didn't see the point, and unfortunately the thing let go after probably about 100 running hours or something like that and wrecked the crankshaft. So that's why you do it. So that was one. And the other thing as well, you have to be really careful that the tightening torque is specified for the use of whatever lubricant you use. And so most torques are quoted for either dry, or if nothing's quoted, right, they're quoted for what's called light oil. So basically, you know, I don't mean squirting it with oil, but you know that they're not bone dry. There's something on them, right? If you put anything on them, you substantially have to reduce the tightening torque massively, right? So on big boats, big ships, big engines, it's not an issue because you actually go by bolt stretch. But for something like these, there'll be a torque for these, no doubt. Should be, I think. Maybe not, because it's just holding the cylinder in place. But certainly for some of them there'll be a tightening torque. So if you're gonna, there are ways of doing conversions. I can't remember off the top of my head what that conversion is. I would look, if I was going to use copper slip, I would do a conversion and use the reduced torque. You must do it that way. The other one to do is by angle. Right, so you don't use torque at all, you use the tightening angle. So what you do is you go down and it'll say something like hand tight, so you'll screw down until it's hand tight, and then it'll say 120 degrees. Put your spanner on, 120 degrees, that's it. Right, you don't see that a lot nowadays. It used to be a big thing. In fact, you even had kits that you fitted and you actually tensioned them according to the gauge, but you just don't see that. I don't see it much anyway, but they used to exist anyway. So as I say, just be careful. One other quick thing is, as I say, they've been soda blasted. You can grip blast them, but you just, honestly, you got to wreck it if you do. But if you did, right, the other thing as well, right, if you do grip blast, right, or even soda blast, I'll be honest with you, right, is that if they're using shell bearings, so this is all rolling element bearings, this one I think from memory, find out when I get the crankshaft out. It's all rolling element bearings. If, like, say the Honda CB400F, that's got shell bearings, if you do not meticulously clean the oil galleries, it destroys the bearings, absolutely destroys it. And you can really, because these oil galleries are really small, you really struggle to clean, and all that build up there, look. And my recommendation would be that if you have an engine which has shell bearings, do not blast, hand clean. Quickly about the gaskets, right, so this gasket has been put on dry, which is absolutely fine. Obviously it may have been from you, which is possible given some of the other stuff I found. The only thing I say about that is one, I don't use liquid gasket if there's a gasket for it, unless I know there's a problem, right, and then I'll be more thinking about fixing the problem, right. I won't use a liquid gasket, but what I do though is I use an anti-slip compound like copper slip. I think molecular should be okay, but copper slip I use, and what that means that it doesn't affect the integrity of the gasket itself, in no way it does, but it does mean that if you assemble the engine, oh crumbs, this doesn't feel quite right, and you go to take it apart again, if you haven't used the anti-seize compound, then you end up turning the gasket and needing a new gasket set again, which is obviously a bit of a bind. And plus the fact you're doing a favour for the guy that's going to take, well, the lady I should say, that's going to take their thing apart again in 10, 15, 20 years time, because it'll come apart so much easier, so you don't have to do all this crap. Yeah, well, one thing I better think of anything else. Right, and I don't think it's going to apply to these. I don't know whether they used it in the materials, and certainly not in this area. May have used it around the exhaust, but it is asbestos in the gasket material. They used asbestos because it had very good high temperature integrity properties. It was a very, very good material in its day, until it got found that it was carcinogenic, obviously, and all this. But if you are suspicious at all, make sure you're wearing a mask, okay, and make sure you get rid of the bits safely, and then give everything a good wipe down. That's, you know, if you've got any suspicion whatsoever, you take that approach again, because it's just not worth it. I mean, you'll know this, but there are 3 different types of asbestos: the white, brown and blue, I think. I can have a guess at the names of them, but maybe out. And the really bad one's the blue one, and that's very rarely seen. I've never seen that. I don't think I've seen much brown asbestos. You sometimes get it in superheated steam gaskets, which operate at 500 degrees C. But I've seen quite a bit of white asbestos on older ships. Okay, it was used extensively for lagging and things like this. It can be added to gasket material, so it's very unlikely for this. Could be as you get towards the hotter end, say in the head gasket, it could have asbestos in it. So just be careful. If you're not sure, mask on, get everything clean. Okay, most likely, if it is there, it's going to be the white, which is the least hazardous form. But just be careful, okay. And if the other thing as well is to go on the forums and ask them. You know, I've got this really old engine. It's as original, right? Does anybody know that there are any issues with asbestos in any of the gasket materials on this engine? Even it used to be a rope lagging, so for like seals and things like this, crankshaft seals. I can only speak from my experience, and that's what I've seen. You know, I've probably done around about, I don't know, 20 odd engines, boat motorbike engines. It's never really come up, but you get an impression, you know, if alarm bells are ringing because of the age of the bike, take precautions.